Joshua Landis is director for the Center for Middle East Studies at the University of Oklahoma and founder of Syria Comment, a publication on the country's politics. He joins us via Skype now from Italy. Great to have you with us, Joshua. Bashar al-Assad appears defiant after these strikes. Russia has said that more than 70 missiles were intercepted. But surely the destruction of 3 chemical weapons facilities will cause some dent in the regime's offensive on the ground. What's your view?
Well, I do think that they will be a deterrent action to the further use of chlorine gas. And America has established an extremely narrow scope for its deterrent action, which is to deter the use of chemical weapons. A mistake that President Obama made in 2013 was not to add chlorine gas into the prescribed chemicals. It was used early on. Obama included it into the prescribed weapons, but didn't punish Syria for using them. And they've been used many times, usually without killing that many people. But this time, many people were killed. The video came out. The president was horrified, as he said, and he used it to, in fact, plug this hole in the deterrence factor. But deterring chemical weapons is a very teeny bandwidth in the spectrum of civil war deaths, because only about 1,000, depending on who you talk to, 1,800, 900 people have been killed with chemical weapons. And when you compare that, of course, that's horrifying. But when you compare that to the 500,000 people who may have been killed in this civil war, it's not going to change the course of the civil war. So in that sense, President Assad, the Iranians, Russia, perhaps will take comfort from the narrowness of this operation and from the fact that President Trump reiterated in his 6-minute talk that he hopes to bring American troops home soon.
Indeed, it's interesting that it seems to send a message of, well, yes, the U.S., the UK, and France have launched these airstrikes, but they've narrowed it to this chemical attack. They say this isn't about intervening in a civil war. And then you have, as you said, Trump saying he wants to pull troops out. Is that not a green light for the regime to essentially carry on doing what it's doing as long as chemical weapons aren't used?
Yes, I think the regime will read it that way, and everybody else will as well. Syria is being chopped into 3 zones. There is, of course, Assad, who's getting the lion's share of about 65% of Syria. And Duma was an important part of that to clean out the suburbs. But the United States, with its allies, the Kurds and the democratic forces, have about 30%, or at least that's what they say. And Turkey is taking another big hunk and has established observer posts throughout Idlib, and it looks like Turkey will be able to include Idlib province into Afrin and Jarablos, which it's already taken. So the war is coming to an end. Of course, these 3 major powers are vying for where the borders will be. Diplomacy is working in some regions, as we saw with Turkish and Russian talks and Iranian talks about the north. But we have to wait and see whether the United States really pulls out of northern Syria. If that's the case, it'll be very good news for both Turkey, Iran, and Assad and the Russians, because they will be able to impose much more of their will in the north of Syria.
Interesting that leaders of Arab states have been rather quiet so far after these airstrikes. Why do you think that is, and how do you expect the region to react?
Well, I don't think Arabs writ large take much solace in this. Many Arabs, of course, will see it as one more American attack that kills Arabs and puts Arabs backwards. Those who have been rooting for the opposition don't take much comfort because it doesn't really change much for the opposition. The people in Duma had to surrender, and they're on buses going back to Jarablos. And so there isn't much to cheer about here. those in the international community that are concerned about upholding this norm of non-use of chemical weapons, I think, are all gratified that this norm has been upheld. But it's not a big thing in the Civil War. It's a big thing for President Trump and this, Obama policy. But it's really not intervening in the Civil War in a profound way, as you pointed out. And that's why I think people are a little bit nonplussed, and they will be disappointed by this.
Indeed, Joshua Landis, many thanks for joining us there with your insight.